Hey guys, it's Alan. Welcome back to the channel. I actually was going to address an article I just wrote that I posted on LinkedIn actually, and it was called the Great Earth Academy for the Soul. And what I wanted to do with this particular video is kind of introduce in a verbal exchange what the point was of the piece and kind of the overall arc to what we're talking about within its subject matter. And what it basically comes down to is that Earth, as we all know, is a soul's academy. You evolve through different stages and different metamorphoses that you must go through in order to evolve. And you start from the most minimalistic part of life all the way to a human expression and then to full control of your own creation. You build your own empire, your own kingdom, and so forth, and you do so over a very, very long journey. And so within the article, what I had spoken about is I basically laid it out as to exactly how I have come to understand from the ancient wisdom that I've been able to tap into how it actually operates for the soul. And I think it's of great benefit to the collective as a whole, because at this time when we're going through a reboot and everybody's getting a new opportunity to begin again and do something great with themselves, understanding what this is all about helps us all conquer those mountains and overcome obstacles that are really not there. But until you understand the structure by which we all operate and live in, we can't really know what it is that we're involved in, right? So what I wanted to say in the piece was, when we begin our lives on this journey, it's like an international private collegiate program that only the bravest and most courageous of souls from throughout the universe dares to attend. Because what it is you take all of your life lessons and everything that you've acquired over whatever different life forms you've had, and you come and you actually test all of that out in a physical manner. Think of it like as a weight, a physical weight that tells you whether your choices are correct or incorrect in a very, very 3D way, where there's actual consequences. And so sometimes people get it confused with like a game console, but for a soul, it is to that degree what we're talking about. So if you've ever played like Super Mario Brothers, is a big thing for me. I grew up in the early 80s, and so for me Super Mario Brothers was a big deal. And as you guys remember, we spent most of our time in that game at first, when it first came out, trying not to get killed every 2 seconds, and trying not to make bad choices, and trying to understand what the structure was to what we were playing, and trying to figure out cheat sheets and how to get things, like how to get extra points and how to do to go above and beyond what maybe the actual game was asking us to do. And so it's a pretty simple explanation for what the Earth experience is. So imagine, if you will, that you are a soul and you have evolved through different life forms, and you are now at a phase where you are attempting to become a co-creator, meaning that you are returning to the divine source of Allah, God, whatever you believe the divine entity to be, and you are going to then be able to, at the end of this collegiate experience, be able to apply changes to the environment and to the scenes and to what's going on around you within the world that you are assigned to help create. And such a task would require you to understand every different aspect to every moving part, so that you are able to make responsible choices and not just willy-nilly change stuff, right? Like, oh, I'm going to make this pink, and then it's like an elephant that's about to die because now you can see, like there's always consequences to every choice. But in order to fully understand that and to test your prowess, you must know it innately. You must know it like as an actor would, a method actor or a mime. You have to be able to convey things that you may not be able to say necessarily, but you need to make sure that you are able to possess the information that you're trying to transmute. And then if you're trying to transform something, you need to know how that operates in every little facet, so that you can understand what you're about to change. And so such a thing is what Earth is all about. So just imagine, if you will, let's suspend reality for a moment and understand that the soul literally is above us, and we are the shadow side. So if you could imagine the sun being above the soul, so the soul is invisible to our eye, but in the reality of the universe, we are the invisible party. We're just the shadow. So if you can remember what it's like when the sun hits you as a physical expression, you cast a shadow, right? Like behind me, you can see there's a shadow. Well, we are that to the soul. And so as the soul comes down here, it must begin at the very beginning. It begins with creation itself. And so how do you best train a protege if you're a mentor? Well, you put them in a scene and you make them act as inanimate objects, and you make them understand what the value is to that particular aspect, to the scene. And then as they progress, you give them a little bit more movement and a little bit more ability to be free and to try things before you make them an active agent that changes the dynamic of the energy. And so the same is absolutely true for the Earth expression. And so that's what I wanted to express in the article, the Great Earth Academy for the Soul, which is a link. I'm going to link it down below here, actually. But the point is, when you begin, if you think about life in general, we can all kind of assess that a meteor per se, traveling through the universe, to many people that are not awakened, seems like a random act of violence that happens to the Earth. But if you understand what it actually is, you might have a better understanding of just how long it's taken you to get to where you are this very second. And so what I'm going to say is this. A meteor isn't just some random act of violence. It actually is a sperm that travels through the universe that's about to bring forth some sort of life matter, a substance, to the Earth egg, and it will then manifest into something great and grand down the line. But it first must be introduced naturally into the environment without being forced in. So how you do it is you send it, and it's like a sperm. It hits the surface. Millions of meteors and comets hit the Earth all the time, right? Or hit different planets. But not all of them break the surface in order to get into that molten lava and create the embryo experience. Until that one. It only takes the one. And the one then carries what? Bacteria and microbes, well, specifically microbes, that then metamorphose into bacteria. And so as you go through the umbilical cord process, you begin to gestate what you have now introduced into the environment. And the two combinations between the earth element of the physical matter and then whatever the microbes are that came with the little swimmy spermy parts mixed together, and from that comes all life. And so then it morphs into the mineral composite, where it starts to solidify and actually becomes something like an embryo. So it becomes that embryonic stage. And so that's where the soul enters this Great Earth Academy, is at that point. So it's just like after the 9 months. So it's probably like thousands of years by the time that you get it, but you are in the process the entire time. So you are the sperm traveling through the egg, and you understand that you're coming into something else much greater than yourself. Earth, Gaia, then opens herself up to you. You mix together, and life stems from that. And then that's the umbilical cord, embryotic, all of that stage. And so by the time that you become a mineral, you are now actively involved as a soul. And so the thing that you're supposed to do is understand that there's 7 different categorizations of this particular phase of the mineral, right? So there's 7 different types of mineral. Now it's really interesting that if you think about life in general, when you begin an earthly experience as a human being, that would take you up to the 2nd grade, right? It would be, when you're born, first, second, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Typically at 5 you enter kindergarten, then you enter at 6 into 1st grade, and then 7th grade you're in 2nd grade. So let's say that that's the experience that you're going through at that point, right? And so that's the exchange that you're having. So while you're a mineral, you are usually something that starts off microbacterial, and then atoms get involved, and you become mineral, and then you become a rock solid item. But in the process, you are literally just a speck. You are just a speck, and your entire point is to understand how you are going to change the world. It's something individual that you represent in that mineral, and it's something identified to a class, like to a specific group of people. So in our time, it would be something like a soul tribe or your family and whatnot, but you belong to that chain of events. And so then you're introduced, and then you become something that gets an active agent, where you start to morph into another compound, and the compound then builds on something else. And so now you're being introduced to other elements, right? And so slowly but surely, you are starting to understand how you fit in from the get-go to every little thing that's about to happen coming forward. And so if you understand that, then you understand just how long it's taken you to get to even watch this right now. So you then become a rock formation. So that means you're being introduced into the actual ability to work with others as far as of structure. How do you fit into the world dynamic? And so in a rock formation, usually it's like limestone and whatnot, and so you end up having to compile and become part of a whole. But you're not moving, you're not doing anything that's specific and entirely all that individualistic. It's just you understanding your place in the world. So from that, you would then move on to what I call the 3rd to 4th and 5th grade, which would be where you are actually the rock. And so you then end up in different environments where you can be in salty water and it erodes you, and then you can end up on land, and then you can end up, in a mixture of the two. And so those 3 years you're spending understanding that there are consequences to your environment. And so it's very slow and subtle, but you are making slight movement, and you're slowly getting your freedom, because as a soul, remember, you must understand how everything works within your environment if you're ever going to truly be able to own it and to take responsibility for the whole thing, which is incredibly powerful. But until you understand how we begin, you won't understand the process. So then you finish the rock formation and you end up leaving elementary school. And the soul then evolves into what we call the middle school program, which is plants. And so if you can understand the dynamic that plays here, then you'll understand that you remember how when we went from elementary school, we were all enthusiastic and really like, oh yeah, let's do this. And then we got to middle school and it was kind of like a shock because suddenly you're now subject to bullies. And what I mean by that is that, animals live off of plants, and plants do something very interesting. They get their conscience, and I call it puberty. They become suddenly aware that they must follow the light if they want to survive, and so you get an introduction of spirituality. You're looking up at the sun, and you're following it for your nutrients and your guidance. And so from the get-go, from when you enter middle school in that puberty stage, you're going to be in an alignment with something higher than yourself, and you're reminded that you are part of something even greater than you, and so you follow the light. In human terms, we follow God or Allah or whoever it is, but you're following that and you're going with the tide, and you're learning what it is to follow direction that way and to find intuition. Now the interesting part, and the reason I call it middle school also, is because remember that some flowers bloom and some flowers don't. It's exactly what puberty is. Some women will mature faster, or some guys will mature faster. I, for example, had a mustache and a beard by the time I was 11, but, I was molested. So because of that negative aspect, there was a positive outcome in the sense that I looked older than the rest of the kids. The only problem is I was actually sexually active, like I was all, woo, hormones. But the point is that some children, just like some souls, manifest puberty a little bit more earlier than another. It doesn't matter if it's a negative or positive experience. It depends on what the soul has chosen to experience. So some flowers bloom and create these beautiful, gorgeous expressions of slight color or whatever it is, and it's their expression, right? That's how they chose to be. Sometimes I refer to that to the feminine energy, right? A feminine energy, a divine feminine, might be more prone to be a blooming, right? A blooming plant or a flower or whatnot. But a masculine might turn to be a non-blooming one. But the point is that as they each bloom, some will bloom faster than others. And so you're understanding the dynamic that's mutual there. There is a parallel between the human expression so that you register what it must be like for a soul in that middle school program. So then you go through the experience and you are a beautiful plant or you are a beautiful vegetable or whatever it is, but you're still prone to being eaten by other animals. But notice that even though that might be true, you are in that experience being introduced to your next level. You're being introduced to the high school experience, because the high school experience is going to be when you metamorphose into an animal. But when you're in middle school, you still need to understand how you are part of the substance and the nutrients that give life to all things. So your process is always to value Gaia, because you are from Gaia. You are from the dirt. That's why we're called people of the dirt, is because we started off as specks of dirt. And so at this point, you are now entering what I would call the 8th grade, senior year, where you rule the school. And what does that mean for you? You become a tree. Now, the interesting thing about the tree experience is that it takes hundreds of thousands of years for a tree to evolve to its full maturation. But notice it's a reward cycle for all of what you've done. Previously, you've been speck, and you've been compounds, and you've been rocks, and you've been plants that may bloom, may not bloom. You've been eaten, you've been pecked at, and you are never really in a place of power until 8th grade, when you've reached that point where you're about to mature into high school. But for you, your lesson here is that you're now rising above it all. It's a cycle. So you see the world from a different vantage point. You now tower over all of your enemies. You now don't worry about any type of attack. You now look your nose down at it, and just like anything else, right before you go to high school, you have the ability to throw shade. You can be rude, we are rude or throw shade and can be a little evil. Well, so can trees. They protect those that they like, and then don't protect others. A tree probably has a great capability of going, I don't like this motherfucker right here. Bring down a lightning bolt. Burn that part of the tree, and the tree grows back and it's fine and dandy. But you know what I mean? And it only allows those animals that are worthy of taking care of it and to bring you some sort of substance to its experience. But notice that its entire time it observes. And so I call that phase your monk or your priestess or your whatever experience. It's your moment of spiritual centeredness, where you are literally in communion with something grander and something much higher than you, and you are understanding the power of your planet. And it's the last phase of your true earth experience, where you are part of the dirt. and you tower over all things, and you are brought nutrients from the soil, and you get water whenever you need it, and you will learn to survive. But it's like a granted experience. You just are here to observe. And so that's why I wrote in the article, many of us humans will go to a tree, and some people will hug it, and some people will ask the trees for wisdom. There's been movies about the trees taking back their power and annihilating the race, because trees are sacred. They're a sacred being that's in communion with a higher sense of power, and they are the last stage of the Gaia phase, right? And they're almost like phallic. They're very phallic, but then there's also this plumage. So there's this neutrality where they are observing everything, including animals, their behavior, and humans in particular. And it takes them a long time. So it's important to point out in this, especially that I pointed out in the article, that I'm going to link down here again, that you must remember that to an animal or to a tree or anything that's non-human, time is not ever linear to us anyway, but to them it goes by like a day, because your consciousness is at a different stage. You are literally experiencing being part of the scene before you can become an active agent. So for you, it's about absorbing what it is that is going on around you, so that you understand what you're going to mimic, what you're going to understand, how you're going to relate. But you have to go through that monk, priest, hermit type energy. And then when it's time, a lightning bolt comes or some mass disaster happens, and the cycle's over. And then comes the fun part. Now you're off to high school. And so the high school experience is, usually something that has to do with animals. And so I always say that freshman year is probably going to be something like you become an ant or a bee. And I say that in the article specifically because of the fact that when you're an ant or a bee, you become colonized. So you're being introduced into the idea that you belong to a moving structure now, where you have the ability to not only turn and help those behind you, because remember, bees pollinate flowers. You were just a flower, or you were just some sort of. So now that you're the animal, you're helping the next soul in line. And so just remember that there's even that soul consciousness becomes there. And so in that experience, you also become part of a communal aspect with something else, an entity where there is a queen bee, let's say, and the queen bee has her wannabes, and then they have their ROTC, their athletes and all that stuff in the war ants. And so everyone plays their part, but they are assigned a specific role, which is kind of common for from what I hear, advanced races, is that they don't have the freedom that you have in this experience, because here you're learning to become a creator. Most civilizations have never had the opportunity yet to become creator. They are born into a situation where they cannot change it. They don't have any free will. And so in this experience, you understand that. And so you're grounded in Earth. And you understand that your purpose is to take care of Gaia, something that we as humans forget about. But you'll understand now, right? And so now every time that you see somebody who's not green or whatever, you're going to be like, because they don't get it. They were once that. And they don't understand that they are here to pollinate the Earth. Part of the exchange with the Great Academy is that you take care of the Academy and you clean the Academy and you keep it healthy. That's why God created it, right? And so from that, you then would probably go into the last phase of that freshman year, would probably be something about a caterpillar. Because that's the first time that you now have you're out of that the prepubescent stage, and now you're in full puberty, and you're becoming a young adult. And so that's the transformation from caterpillar to butterfly. And then suddenly your soul gets to individualize itself by the way it presents its colors, right? So you go into the cocoon, you've learned all these lessons, and you're like all excited, and you were this little worm, again, like a semen, or like a little phallic thing, and then you're running around, and then suddenly you go into this cocoon, and when you come out, like all of our lives, you are now this beautiful colored, beautiful either moth or butterfly, and you spread your wings and you take off, and you get to experience the truth of being a spirit, and you just fly through the air. I think it's like 5 days or whatever it is, but it's a short-lived. But it's the beginning of the introduction of the death, rebirth, metamorphosis, right? And so it indoctrinates the soul to understand that there's way more out there, and that this will change. And so it goes from something that's very preyed upon and very, to something quite gorgeous that just flutters, and it brings beauty. But what does it do? It gives them the ability to truly fly around. And the way that they do is that they also play with flowers, and they bring beauty to the world, but they also come in more and more contact at this rate with humans. As bees and ants, you sting people, but as a butterfly, you get to fly over their heads. Now, here's an interesting part. it must be like the summer phase, like that summer before you become a sophomore, because sophomore year must then be a bird. You must be able to then become a bird after the butterfly. It's like a slow integration. And so then you come back as a bird. Usually probably the bird will eat you, which is kind of funny, because karma is introduced at this point. So birds come in, and instead of now being the insect that the birds feed on and stuff like that, they typically have a little bit more power and control over their environment, but they're still subject to bigger birds, right? But they're more on top of things, just like in high school. A sophomore is always going to outrank a freshman. And so while the soul is experiencing this, it now has the ability to do something new. It becomes sexually active at a much different rate. It actually, does a whole fan dance, and it does like this little dancey thing, and it does this plumage thing, and like if you look at a peacock, the male is the one with all the color, and the female has the more demure color. And so understand that you're already learning that ebb and flow of sensuality in that phase. And so the interesting part is that you also then become more predominantly a mother or father type of bird, right? You must build a nest. You must, and it's stuff that's ingrained into you. So your soul is being awakened to the fact that you have responsibilities to lineage, to pass it on. And so they build their nests, and with the nest, they take responsibility, and usually birds are together and all that stuff. And then suddenly the mother or the father will kick you out of your nest, and you will go plummeting towards the earth, and you're like, oh my God, I'm breaking out, just like high school. And you get your driver's permit. That's exactly the moment where you get your little driver's permit. And so you actually have the ability to then take flight of your own, and that's exactly the same experience for the soul. It learns to fly, and so now it has mobility, and it's away from mommy and daddy, and it gets to go do its own thing, and it grows and it prospers just like high school, so around the same year. Now, interestingly, you would think the transformation between the bird's era into the, not sophomore, it is the next level. I can't remember. It's freshman, sophomore, this next middle one. So you would think that the senior level would be like a lion or a tiger or a bear. Oh my. No, it wouldn't be that. And here's, I'll get to why a senior is a different phenomenon. But what happens at this particular stage after the sophomore year is that the next year for a soul, which would be, however long that is actually a lion or tiger or bear in that phase. You would think that it was a senior, but it's not. And here's what I mean. In this phase, you are still young, and so your needs are primal, and so, but you've always been the prey. You've always had something possibly eating you, like an eagle or whatnot, or cats or dogs and so forth. So notice that you become identified more in a gender role at this phase. Like you'll notice that a bear is more maternal than a lion, and a lion is typically more male driven, while a cat and other norms of forms of cat are typically more feminine, right? That's what they say. But notice that I think that, to me personally, that a wolf stands more in masculine energy. It's a loner. It chooses not. It can be part of a pack, but it can choose not to be. So you notice that your soul is choosing its path. Either you are more maternal and you want to be a bear and be all grrr and make sure that you take care of your cubs and you're a predator, but you are more maternal. Or you can be a lion who's very sexually active. I kind of call the lion phase. All of us go through it, by the way, in this little section right here. I call it the birth of the ego, right? Because you are sexually prowess, and you want your cake and eat it too. It shows your ego, and it shows your personality starts to become clear to the world because of what your choices are as a soul. So where I would have chosen to be a wolf because I have the ability to go and be alone and to go howl at the moon. I'm a Cancer, so for me, I come from probably that lineage, but I was also able to be part of a pack. So that modality between them is the lion and lioness is very much about their pride, ego, and then the bear is very much about maternal, and then the wolf is more about paternal. It's more about the dominant moon change, but you can be male or female in that dynamic, but you're still going to be probably a more masculine soul. Typically, I'm doing sweeping generalizations, but we're talking about something that seems abstract to a lot of people, but you get what I'm saying. And so then the lion would be kind of the, I don't want to say it, but the lion is the ego. That's the straight ego. And so everyone must go through that. We equate in the zodiac the Leo as the heart. And so I think of them more as a heart on. You know what I mean? But I love a lion because I'm a Cancer moon, but Leo rising. So I can't talk too much shit about my own people. But I'm just saying, there's a lot of ego. And so it can be a little bit toxic. And you notice that they have a den and they have all these different sexual partners. And it's kind of like that phase where you become the athletic jock and you're like the quarterback or you're the cheerleader. cheerleader, the head cheerleader, and you're that couple, right? And you start to really understand the hierarchy to the high school that you experience that you're in. Now, interestingly, when you're done with that phase, you would think that you would go right to human, but that's not true. Your senior year is the biggest and most important one. It's your reward cycle, like the tree. It's like a counterbalance to the tree in middle school. Your high school experience is actually going to be a domesticated cat or a dog. And here's what I mean by that, is that understand that a cat or a dog that's domesticated is being indoctrinated into the human experience, just like the butterfly is indoctrination into the flying ability in the bird. And so you understand that as you metamorphose and keep growing and doing these transformations, these deaths and rebirths, your soul is learning vast amounts of information from each evolutionary jump as a soul. And so it's choosing itself more wisely. So when it gets to the senior year, it can become Sheba the cat, And notice that a lot of feminine, powerful women that have ruled have always chosen to be more in alignment with the cat, and then masculine men tend to be more in alignment with the dog, right? And it kind of makes sense. I don't want to be vulgar here, but how do we refer to most men these days? They're all dogs. And then what do dogs chase? Well, I mean, it's vulgar, but it makes the point. I even put it in the article. And so the point is that you are now in a position where you technically run the house, if you think about it. The dog and the cat, like a cat cares nothing about anybody else. The cat literally is there to observe and experience what it's like. It can be moody, it can be bitchy, it can flip you off whenever it wants, it can do like a purr, it can do whatever it wants, it can raise its hand like a queen would do, right? But a dog is more like snippy, like always in your business, like nosy, and like it's learning. So there's two different learning sets here. The more masculine energy might want to become the dog, and the more feminine might want to be more demure and like, I don't feel like doing that. I don't like that food. Why are you giving that to me? Like, that type of cadence. And so understand that that's the beauty of it. Now, the interesting part is consciousness is very present in the animal kingdom, especially with the two senior years, right? Because the senior year, when you're a domesticated animal, you start to see the cat interact with humans, or the dog interact with humans, right? The dog is a man's best friend, and the cat is like just a royal queen, right? But they've learned to operate on their own within the human dynamic. They learn very quickly that you don't get run over by cars and this and that. Now, there's a very special clause here. You see, there's a special place in hell for people who do dog fighting or somehow have animal cruelty towards these animals, because they're souls that are about to become human. And so what you don't realize is that the karma is immediate. So these are the same assholes who suddenly get hit by a car and get mauled and die very painfully. And they're like, why did this happen? Because you literally butchered a dog or a cat that was a senior level soul that was about to become human, and you just completely fucked them up. And so you get really harsh karma for stuff like that. But the point is that there's an interesting consciousness that shows up in the domesticated animal that I don't know if it's as seen with the other previous incarnations. And what I mean by that is, have you ever noticed that when a dog or a cat is ready to pass away, it will run away from home and get hit by a car, or it will go die in private or get eaten by another animal? It always moves away from home so that their loved ones, that compassion, so that they don't have to experience the death of that soul. Even though the soul is ready to go, it's the first time that we understand the value of power, and to know that you have a way to get away. You don't have to let people see you suffer. And the cat or dog knows how to do that. And so that's like right before we go to the college experience. Now, let's talk about the college experience, because we all went hog crazy. We all went hell. Like, I could not run faster away from my house. I could not. I was like, I can't live with these people no more. I mean, admittedly, there was a whole religious thing and all that stuff, and I had to get out of that, and there's a whole, and I had dropped out when I was in 8th grade, so there was like all this stuff going on. So, but for me to go to college was a big deal, but I was like, I can't live like this. So when I went, I balls to the walls. I just ran as fast as I could. Now, the interesting part is it's the same expression with the soul. The big winning thing is that after all this study and everything you've done, you are now in a collegiate program. Now you're going for your BA on soul level. You're going to start as probably something, you may have some struggles. If you're a nervous soul, then you may not be carried all the way to term. You might miscarry, so that you understand what the process of gestation is, so you understand what it is to be morphed into that. And then you might, be aborted, and that's because you also backed out. Like, I didn't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Because the mom will never have a child that doesn't want to be there, right? Like God will go, okay, that's not going to happen. But so there's always some dynamic going on there, right? But before that, that's even before they get here. But when they get here, it's just like us going to college for the first time. A great example is you get into freshman 15, you go to your first keg party and throw up for the next week. You get pregnant and like you got to do something about it. And like all this stuff happens in that first year that you probably shouldn't be doing, but you're away from your parents. And so that freedom that comes with that is the big explosion, the big payoff for everything that you've come through in previous. But notice how many thousands of years it's taken you to even be born a human. So when you're here, then all hell breaks loose, because what you've been seeking, that dream that you were so wanting, is your biggest nightmare, because you get lost in the illusion that you think that this is all real, and you don't remember that you're a soul, and suddenly you're like all materialistic, and you get lost in this ego thing, and all, and you're not going to be born to privilege right away, because that would make no sense. You can't grow from that. So most souls that are born to privilege have at least evolved to a point where that's a reward cycle of some degree. So most souls will be born pure, and they will have to survive, and that is the hardest lesson to all things, because no matter how pure you are, when you start, everything in the world is going to try to hit you and make you go back down. You can't be pure, you can't be yourself, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you're going to get hit by a car, you're going to get blah blah blah. I mean, the first thing that happens when you come out of the birth canal is someone slaps you and you start crying. Yeah, this is a party. So your soul immediately that's like an indoctrination right there. When you slap your baby like that, then your baby immediately starts to cry, and the first thing it feels is pain. You have taught it to feel pain. And so understand that that's the first level of indoctrination. And so when you're in that experience, you quickly forget that you have learned all this before, and that you're here to individuate, and that you're here to be strong, and you're here to do your own life purpose. You forget immediately, because it's like being at a game console. You literally can die every 2 seconds if you don't know how to jump over something, or if you eat the wrong food, or if your parent slaps and kills you and beats you, and people rape you, and people hurt you, and people do all this stuff, and it's like this huge academy that you are now in a collegiate program. So now you have conflicting personalities. If you're lucky, you join a fraternity or a sorority, but then even they're catty. It's like it's the survival of the fittest at the optimal level. But remember that you're so pure that you are quickly losing sight of who you are in order to survive the environment, not knowing that you could always just be like, I'm out. But you don't do that, because you're trying to please your mommy and daddy, and you're trying to please it. So you go through this whole thing, and so by the time that you're done with freshman, you're exhausted. The coursework was too much. Some of us end up having to go home and have to regroup, so you end up not dying quickly as a soul. And then it's like all of this melee, and more people get lost in the college experience than you would think, because they start it and they can't finish it. It's just like a soul. And so the soul will continually go through the same thing over and over again, and have to go through the same courses over and over and over again, because they're not getting it, or they can't finish it, or they don't understand algebra. Me, I can do calculus, but I can't fucking do algebra. Like, anything that's structured up my ass, I'm not interested unless it's a husband. Like, I just don't need anything that far up there. Like, you have to do this to go this. With calculus, you can work a problem backwards. I know, because I aced calculus. And it was very easy for me. And that's not ego. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like, brains work in different ways. And so understand that what might be easy for you to accomplish was not easy for the next person. Like somebody who's like a Cancer, a Leo and a Cancer, when they look at each other, sometimes we're just like, we're supposed to be together? You're an asshole. And and the other person's like, yeah, and you're like way too emotional. And so, like, the two paths, you're just looking, and I'm a Cancer Leo rising, so I'm just like, y'all should have seen puberty for me. But that's what the expression is in soul. Like, you understand the zodiac. Most people who are really gifted and very spiritual don't assign gender to the different zodiacs, because they understand that it can be either way. But there are predominant energies that exist. But they always get it backwards for some reason with Capricorn. Capricorn is a feminine, by the way. When it goes into Aquarius, Saturn becomes the masculine, FYI. So understand that, because like I always say because I used to say Uncle Saturn when I was referring to Capricorn, and then I don't know who, I think Natalie pointed out, Natale. She pointed out one day in one of her things, this is completely digression, but I always give props to Nat, but she had pointed out that it's actually a feminine that rules the house of Capricorn, and it's the masculine side of it that rules the house of, or something like that. I'm not the big zodiac guy. Like, there are way more people who are much more informative on that they didn't know a lot more than I do. But I do know enough to know that don't ever assign energy like that. But having said that, Cancer is the maternal aspect. It's where all life comes through, just FYI. And so when you're born as a soul, you enter as a Cancerian, because you must feel all things. You are now feeling the expression of life. So imagine being a pure soul who not only just got beaten when you're born, but now you have to feel everything. So you're feeling what it's like to try to not to, like all these XYZ factors. And so it's a huge learning thing that's just like college. And so people get stuck within, like, I think usually by the sophomore year of college, people are either going to make it or they're not going to make it. And most souls get lost in that little segue. Because instead of being individual, anything that you were picked on or anything that you were subjugated to in high school as like an animal is not true for you anymore, because you are now an adult. You can literally go and buy your friends to join a fraternity or sorority, or you can but you have to be pretty, but everybody's pretty. If you see the world through the eyes of God, every person on this planet is gorgeous, right? So that's not really, but I'm saying, like, you go to find your packs. And so those individualistic qualities are actually your benefit, not your detriment, right? But the problem is then you immediately start to conform to your pack and to your soul tribes and all that stuff. And I don't consider those soul tribes. I consider those packs, like just soul contracts or whatnot. But you start to conform to other people's things. So immediately in college, where you're supposed to find yourself, you lose yourself to indoctrination. You immediately think that you must be, because you have to get labeled. That's the whole college experience. And in our world is you must become labeled. Either you are a brain and you're going to work for NASA, or you're going to be a sorority girl and you're going to do like language or whatever it is. And notice that there's like a cadence when you ever say stuff like that, where it's like looking down your nose at someone because of what they are. A beautiful person that's intelligent wields more power than anybody combined. You see what I'm saying? So I always say, if you're a smart, like I have a niece who's a scientist, and she is super hot, and I go, you're going to rule the world. And she looks at me and she goes, I know. And I'm like, that's my girl. And she's very, she doesn't say it like that, but she's very cute about it. But she's going to. And so always, but we have this tendency, the society wants you to always be broken down and looked down upon, to be like, oh, well, she's too pretty to get that, or he's not good looking enough to have that person. No, you're not good looking enough for it. That's why that person chose that person. But it's like they're trying to break you down, right? And so as a soul, you have to understand that you're going through the same exact pressures. You are religiously indoctrinated. You have all of these religious wars, and then you have all these faith-based things, and then you try to find yourself, and the people tell you you're wrong, and then nobody can ever think for themselves, and it's, oh my God, the sky is falling, oh, life sucks, blah, blah. And so you immediately start to conform to it because you don't want to stand out at this level, because you understand that you're trying to get a job. You see, everything here is like, it leads you to this false lull that leads you down the wrong path, and we all fall for it, and that's what college is. You go, oh, I want to do, meanwhile you love math, but you're going to go, well, English is going to make me more money. Or psychology, if I become a psychologist, my parents will get off my ass. Meanwhile, you want to go do liberal arts. So you already betray yourself. So that's what the whole college experience is, and that's what the whole academy is about. And so we get lost in this cycle, and we spin and spin and spin, and we keep making these mistakes, and then we end up marrying people we don't want to marry, but they're the right people for us at the time, and, oh, well, they belong to, I'm a Kappa, they're a Kappa, or I'm a Kappa, they're an Alpha, they're blah, blah, blah. And you start to do this thing where it's label, 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 and your soul's going, we just spent thousands of years fucking getting here. And so there's this weird energy strife that happens between the lower expression of the shadow and the higher energy of the soul. The soul is now like, this fucking monkey is out of control, what do I do? And the mind's going, that's why you're here, learn. And so your higher self will always tell you as a kid, don't run into the street. And what does the kid do? Runs and gets hit by a car. That means that the soul hasn't learned to funnel its energy and communicate well enough with its own shadow. Because remember, you're here to learn how to become a creator. So if you can't control your own shadow, your own darker aspects of yourself, which is what we are, then you can't be a functioning creator. You can't add beauty to the world if you're still chaotic, because then you're just going to create chaos. You're just going to put something in there and there's like a loophole, and it's like a really bad lawyer, a lawyer who like took the bar 7 times. That's the type of person. I don't think you can do that, but or maybe you can. I don't know, I've never really looked at it, but it's that type of scholastic experience. They've taken the bar 7 times, and you hire them, and they do the work for you. That's exactly what that is when you're having this dynamic play out. And so that's why the divine is so much about free will, is because it's such an empowering state. When you make the right choices, and when you have evolved and made the right spiritual centered energetic proper alignment, then what you create is harmony. You seek peace. Like, I can't stand noise anymore. I even when I walk now, I don't even put my headphones on anymore, because I like the idea of just calmness. It's not that I don't love music. I will listen to music for a certain amount of time every day. But then how do you hear your inner guidance? How do you know what you're doing is correct? How do you listen to God? How do you hear something grander than yourself if you're always with something in your ear? So I've just pulled away. But it took me like, I've been here like probably billions of freaking years, because I'm not the fastest learner. I'm super intellectual spiritually, but when it comes to stupid shit like algebra, I told you, I flunked it. I flunked algebra like every single time. I barely passed it finally the last time, and I was begrudgingly, because I hired a tutor. And I was like, I just didn't want to do it. And sometimes that's the biggest obstacle, is that sometimes what we need to do is so scary, or it's so... Fear is an illusion anyway. I mean, if you really understand that we're in an academy, then understand that you can't ever do anything wrong, truly. Sorry, I needed to move. I'm on my bed, because all the good stuff happens with a camera in bed. But you see what I'm saying. So, when you're in the academy, you get to this point where your shadow is not listening to you. And so that's the whole collegiate experience, is how do you find your voice? How do you actualize what you want in the world? And it's on the process to something greater, but you don't know that yet. Right now you're just trying to regain that sense of identity, because you've now become subjugated to all of these other XYZ factors, and you've become so... You can't do it. Like, you're just like, I don't want to be unpopular. I want to be popular. I wasn't popular in high school. I wasn't popular in junior high, but I'm really popular now. Meanwhile, you're putting out, and all of your morals and ethics are out the window. You know what I mean? Like, you are somehow betraying yourself more in the college experience, aka the human experience. You know what's right and what's... You know that there should be not child trafficking. You know that should be ended. You should know that there should be no subjugation of races. You know that there should be no this, that, and the other. You know it internally. It's just, and especially anything against Earth. No moron on this planet should, no offense to the morons, because that's an insult to most moronic people, but to these assholes, they'll sit there and say that there's no problem with the deforesting. Well, you were just a tree. You were a bee, and the bees are dying. Connect the dots, otherwise we're not going to make it. You know what I mean? But instead of being like all negative about it, you have to find that voice and that strength to say shit like that. And people are like, oh, Al's lost his mind. Oh, well, great. I'm glad I did, because I'm able to now educate the world about what it is to be in the human experience and what we're trying to do as souls. So remember that you can never dissolve a shadow. A shadow will always be present. You just need to confront your fears, and that's what makes it, the light shine through it. And so the shadow becomes more like that, a light shadow. But it's still needed, because it's the counterbalance. It gives weight to your choices, to a soul that is exactly what's at play at this college level, at the whole academy here, called Earth, is that every choice that you make in the mind, in the spiritual etheric realm, has a consequence if you are on the verge to becoming a creator. So that's what the physicality of our experience is all about, is that you literally learn by getting hurt. You get hurt over and over and over again, and you stop doing it. And then you're like, oh, let me try this. And then you do it. So that is the experience of life, right? So at the college level, you get into this whole thing where you lose your identity. Finally, you may find your voice, you may not, but usually it's a voice in someone else's legacy, or you're in the shadow of someone else. You believe things that you know is not true for you, but you're going to go with it because you don't want to make waves. And so you can be in the college years forever. In fact, in spiritual circles, we call it the big break. This is the last time that they're going to try to break any souls out. Because at this point, if you're stuck in the illusion, you go with the illusion. Because you can't take someone's free will away. And you see what I'm saying? So that's part of the danger of going into this private collegiate program, is that you must understand that this is for people who are going to be the bosses. These are the people who own empires. In the physical world, they're going back home. You're going back home to God. You're going to be in God's physical court. Whatever you got, Allah, Source, the divine universe, the higher conscious, whatever you want. You're going to work at the top. You're going to be, one day, one of us could someday be another God in another universe. That is the point of this. God is reassembling its parts. If you understand that we're in the imagination of the divine, then you understand that it's bringing all of itself back together to make itself whole. And the only way to do that is to advance and to rise above it and become a creator, a co-creator at our level. And as a co-creator, you then serve the divine in ways that bring beauty, love, harmony, light, and all of the integrity and all of the great things that bring the world together. That unity is what the divine seeks, right? That's what the world is about. But when we're in this collegiate program, we get lost in the illusion that it's all about materialism and it's all about this and it's all, but it's not, because if it was, then wealthy people would be happy. They wouldn't be killing themselves, but they do, because it's empty. There's nothing to the money. The only reason I actually want any money is because I have a lot of programs that I need to do that's part of my life path. I have charities I need to build. I have schools I need to build. I have a program that needs to be on TV. I have all this stuff that I need to do that I know is my life purpose. Right now, I just have to wait. And for people like me, like an alpha omega personality, I mean, I'm an alpha, but I tend to be, I like to be funny, and I like to find humor in everything, so I tend to stand back and be like, I'll be the omega, you be the alpha, you be the ego, I'll be the conscious. And that's not the case. I'm just saying that that's like my internal monologue. Because I have divine masculine and feminine. Although, my soul is divine feminine, I'm still very masculine in life. And so there's this dance that goes between it. And that's what emperors and people of very high achieving or a high life purpose and so forth. Like, I'm life path 33. So when you have these type of things, you are a balanced agent. And so you must bring change to the world. The only way to do that is to battle like the ego and the conscience and kind of go, bow chicka bow wow. And the conscience goes, I'm not in the mood. You know what I mean? Like, it's that dynamic, but within. And so in that experience, while we're all here, we're basically on that path. And so we're trying to become remember who we are. And by saying that is that remember that you are a part of God, or something higher than yourself. People get so weird about that. But God, Allah, some people believe in Buddha, some people believe in Jesus Christ, some people believe in Christ, some people believe in the Messiah, some people believe in whatever you believe in. You are trying to encapsulate and walk in that power, which is to unite the planet. But you can't do that if you're willing to be controlled and manipulated and being told what it is that's right and wrong. You must make your own choices, otherwise you can't create anything. You always live in someone else's shadow. And so the thing about us is that we're bringing the light, right? We are the light beacons. And in order to do that, you have to understand that you came through all of this. So when those assholes sit there and say things, and I'm going to use the asshole word because I'm the spicy one, when they sit there and say, oh, we don't care about the planet, fuck it, we're going to take off and go to another planet. You're not going anywhere. You don't get it. You don't get it. This is an academy. You don't get to leave this academy unless you are worthy. And when you are worthy, they take you out. Whatever they is, whatever the higher power is. You don't get to do shit. So you can try up the wazoo. If you are not worthy, God will never, or Allah or whoever, will never let you off this rock. It's an illusion anyway. So understand that. Like, at the end, the divine always will get its way. So that's why I find it very funny. People are like, let's deforest the Amazon. You were just a tree. Think of all the souls that you are destroying in that moment that have been here for thousands of years. And what? Now your ego is that important. You think you're so big and bad. Do you have the right to annihilate Gaia, a planet built specifically to train your soul to be a creator for God? You think that you're going to be rewarded in this world for doing shit like that? Wake up. Wake up. It's not going to happen. And that's one of the greatest problems that we have right now, and that's why everything's being destroyed, is because no one is valuing the fact that they are in a school, that they are basically free to do anything they want. Any limit is within your own head. And that is the truth of all life. And if we don't wake up and get that, then we're always going to be miserable and blame Gaia, who is the school. And guess what Gaia's doing? Get these motherfuckers off of me. Like, they don't care about shit. Selfish prick assholes. And and then, oh, well, we don't need to worry about global warming. We don't need to do this. Where are you? What planet do you live on? Because you're not moving from here. So get it. You know what I mean? But we get lost in the illusion. Oh, materialism. I gotta be wealthy. Well, you're never going to get out of here. You are always going to be stuck on Earth. Well, not for long, but Earth's changing. Earth is she's done. She's ready to evolve herself, and only the souls that are evolving with her are going. That's it. That's the end. That's the best way to say it. And everybody else, oh yeah, I don't care anymore. Like, the truth of the matter is that you must be able to understand that you are a soul that has been through thousands of years of education to stand in this moment, to hear me say this to you, to understand and get it, and be like, oh my God, I am in God's imagination. Oh my God, I'm a vessel of God. If I choose to be, I can make this whole world a better place like that. All I gotta do is snap out of this bullshit, snap out of this fake reality, snap out of all this crap that everybody's telling me to. Why would God ever make women secondary? Why would God ever make gay people? God doesn't make mistakes. That's so stupid. I know God would never make. If you look at the beauty of everything that He ever built in this fucking galaxy, and I'm going to sit here and question Him by saying that, oh, this person's not meant to be here. Who the fuck am I? But you won't know that unless you stand in your power and you look back and you go, hey, oh my God, I was a mineral. Oh, it totally makes sense. If I'm going to be part of the architect's program, then I have to know the actual structure. I have to work my way through it. Any good lieutenant or any good executive, any good leader will know what? How everything works. What have I been saying for years, guys, on all of my channels? All of them. Ooh, I have an empire now. The 2 channels that I have, I've always said this. I am the type of leader that has never moved laterally from one managerial position or executive position to another. I always go from, when I was a training manager, I immediately went straight back down to customer service because I was training manager for a for-profit firm that raised money for nonprofits, and I was really badass. But I didn't go laterally. I went all the way back to the beginning and started as a call center rep for another company. And then I worked my way up. Why? Because there's never anything that I'm going to ask someone to do that I can't do myself. That is a leader. That's what leadership is about. But I've known that innately. It's part of my life path. But just so you know that, you have to understand that that is what we're doing here as souls. You want the rewards in life. You want to create your empire here on the planet. Well, first you have to pay homage to how you got here. Ooh, truth. The only way to do that is to understand the thousands of years. Do you know how much energy has been spent on you getting to this moment right now for the divine? Do you know how much the universe is counting on you to snap out of whatever illusional bullshit that you're in that tells you you can't do something right now? You are fighting to breathe air. Why? I don't know. Why am I doing that? If you are of service to this planet, if you are here to educate the world in some way or add value, beauty, art, I was just doing my art, I was going to hang it up behind me, but I was going to do like this. But I just couldn't get it straight enough, and I was like, oh, I'll do it later. Do you bring beauty? Do you bring light into this world? Can you create out of darkness beauty and contextual things that represent time frames? I'll tell you right now, I still have a theory that we're in a painting somewhere in God's house, and God's just looking at us, and it's something He created, or she created, the universe created, whatever source, divine, and we're in the divine's castle, in the kingdom. I don't know why, I must have been there at some point, but I just figure like we're in a painting, and we're all moving parts within the painting, but we can never paint our own creation and put it in God's house if we don't first stand in our power and understand that we have, the only thing stopping us is us. So, okay, I have all these amazing programs that I really want to get going, right? And this is the power of my soul. And what I'm saying to you is that it's the power of your soul as well. Remember, I'm not looking down, I'm looking at you eye level. I could sit here and wait all my life. Notice that on both of my channels, okay, not a lot of success. But it doesn't stop me, because what I've created is everything that already is going to be. Instead of waiting to start from zero and then create, why don't you create from before? Get your momentum going. Get yourself in place to where your voice actually carries weight. And then when you go, then you're doing maintenance. You're not doing a build. You're doing maintenance. I've done books, I've done articles, I've done all of this stuff. I've actually gone on mission for almost 2 years now, and the world would consider the worst conditions, and one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life by going into the homeless experience and going through that whole thing, sharing all of that with the world. Do you know how much weight that carries to me and how proud I am of my life? So anything that happens to me now, Al Arevalo, has created for myself. I did that already. No one can take that away from me. And you know how I did it? I stopped playing the game. I stopped letting other people's opinions tell me what I can or cannot do in this world. Because everybody wants materialistic answers except a spiritual. A true spiritual leader or spiritualist or priestess or high priest or whatever or hierophant. They build within and it shows out. You can't go backwards in that scenario. Only the materialistic who have mastered materialism will then work the other way around. But if you aren't an ascendant, if you are a man of God or a woman of God, if you believe in Christ, if you believe in Buddha, if you believe in Allah, then you can't build that way because your energy that you're channeling doesn't allow it. They are humble people. So build your empire and do it like I did. Start from ground zero and go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it does not matter anyone else on this planet's opinion of your work but the divine. You are his children. And he gives the castle keys to who he fucking wants. And you see that in the powerful people who are not nepotistically given what they've had. There are people on this planet like Oprah Winfrey's and Tyler Perry's and Bill Gates. People who, well, I have a thing with Bill Gates, but he still has done incredible things for himself. But as a spiritual person, I have a thing. But okay, so, but my point is, notice that they got the money for something already created. Everyone here wants to be handed, like to be discovered on a street corner. That's a hooker. Raise your bar, like, you know what I mean? Like, I know that's a bad joke, but it's funny. You want something to just be handed to you, but what about all of the work that you've done up until that point? Here's the thing. You can never visualize what it is that you're about to receive unless you've done the work. Because you're going to have all these variables that come up that's going to shake you and break you down. Whereas for me, I'm just going to look at you and be like, no. What the fuck are you going to say to me? Nothing. But I'm going to be respectful, and I'm going to be, very judicious and all that. But so what I'm saying to you, though, is that this is the collegiate experience. That's why now we've gone through all of the minerals, plants, animals, and now we're at the top of the food chain, and our souls get stuck in this repetitive record. I mean, even our TV is the same. What? There's no fresh ideas anywhere? Oh, come on, give me a break. You just don't want fresh ideas. You don't want things to expose things. You don't want things to open your mind. You don't want things to make you reveal your truth, because then you would have to dismantle everything around you, and how inconvenient. But if you only knew that on the other side of that is everything you've ever wanted, then you fucking do it, right? But no, I don't. I'd rather be asleep. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to fight for child traffic, to stop child trafficking. I don't want to fight to get child molesters out of churches. I don't want to fight to get women equal rights. I don't want to fight to get African American rights. No, I don't want to do anything that brings justice to the world, because that would mean that I would be looked at. And then you wonder why you're still here. So the academy then goes to this phase where you finally get your BA as a soul. I love my that's a good tangent. What? You get to the point where you get your BA. Great. You've learned how to be human. What about your soul? You've now lost all of what it means to stand in your power, but you've learned how to be a monkey. Great. Now you know how to control the material world and be a monkey. Good. So now you bring more bananas home and everybody's happy. Except who? You. Why? Because your soul's going, oh my God, what is he doing? Why did you marry that person? Why are you doing this? This is not what we are. This is not who we are. What are you doing? And you're just like, but I have a lot of really pretty things. Look, my barrettes, gold. And everybody in the universe is just like, this selfish little prick. Do you know how much time has gone into... And you're just like, no, I'm happy. Meanwhile, you're popping pills, you're sleeping with other people, you're not being loyal to your family, you're doing all this stuff, and you're like, oh, I'm blaming the world for everything. You did it. It's your manifestation. And I'm not castigating anybody. I'm giving you guys the truth of things so that you can step out of it and go, holy shit. This has taken me thousands of years to hear this man tell me the truth. So then you get to the point where suddenly someone who has a kind heart, or you stumble on my video, or you stumble onto a teacher, a professor that sees the sadness in your eyes and mentions to you, hey, there's this thing called esoteric theosophy, and there's these fringe thinkers that are called New Age, and there are these people who believe in advanced races who created us, and there are other ideas in the world that might just set you free. If you can just stop caring what the fuck anyone else around you says about it. And suddenly your soul regains control because your body goes, oh my God, I knew there was more. I knew there was more. This could not be my fucking life. I cannot deal with this. And your soul goes, gotcha. You're going to the master's program. You're going to be a master. Let's roll. You start studying, you start working your ass off, you start looking at all the different breadcrumbs, you start following the Easter eggs, you get all these answers, suddenly you get empowered, suddenly you start building shit that no one else understands. By the time that everything catches up to you, you are now the bomb and you are a master. You have your master's degree. Welcome to the PhD program. The PhD program is for the masters who have mastered the soul connection back, regaining its control over the physical and all of its lessons coming up to it. And guess what the soul does at a master's level at this point? It turns around and it teaches the world what it knows to get its PhD. See, when you're a master, you can leave the earth and you can go up and you can do creation. But some of us want to create our own cosmos. Some of us want to create something so powerful that it changes not just our game here, but changes the universe. Some of us want to bring balance into the world that brings harmony, peace, love, light, that brings people up, not down. It doesn't tell women they can't. It tells women they can. It doesn't tell gay men they can't. They can. It doesn't tell black people they can't. They can. You have all the power in the fucking world that you want in this moment if you just choose to snap out of it and realize how long it's taken God and the universe and your soul to get you to this fucking point to hear me say these words to you. It took them thousands upon thousands of years for you to gestate into being able to understand that this life is a gift. It is such a private academy that most souls cannot come here. It's that elite. Don't waste the education you've been given. Don't waste it on bullshit that doesn't matter. Because anything that I get in my life, or that any of these wonderful PhD souls that are turning around now, that are going to be leading this, anything we get will blow everything out of the fucking water. Because we're not just building in the 3D, we're building in the 5D. We're building 3D, 4D, and 5D. That's power. That's an education. And that's why we're here on planet Earth. That's it for me, guys. That's why I wanted to write the article. I will link the article down here at the Great Earth Academy for the Soul. My name is Al Arvalo. You have a great night.